to hit record on the webcast, as I just did now. We are recording today's webcast so that you can go and check that out later if you have to leave a little bit earlier, you want to share it with a colleague, or even just kind of go back and watch it again to see if you missed something. We do have a couple of quick poll questions at the beginning today. We'll appreciate if you can answer those for us. Just gives us a sense of who it is that we're talking to. If you're watching with a group, you can just pick the answer that best represents your group as a whole. And we do appreciate your feedback. We have a short evaluation at the end of today's webcast. I'll put a link to it in the chat box when we're done. If you can just take a second. It's less than 5 questions, takes less than a minute to fill out. Our funders like to hear it. And finally, we do have that chat feature available. So that's how we'll do Q&A today. Anytime throughout the presentation, if you have a question, go ahead and put that in the chat box, and we will be sure to get to it at a designated time. A couple of things that are new from Chesapeake Stormwater Network that I wanted to make you all aware of. We have just released our final climate change and stormwater stakeholder survey results. There is a report that summarizes those findings. You can also find the full set of responses in the appendix to that report. I can make a link available to all of you in the chat box at the end of today's webcast for that as well. You can also sign up for our Stormwater Scoop newsletter, and we will be putting that out in our next newsletter coming out in the first half of next month. We also hope to be putting out next week the latest memo in our ongoing stream restoration work. This is new guidance for improving the prevented sediment protocol, or protocol 1 of the stream restoration expert panel report that came out back in 2013. So a fresh look, some new guidance for implementation to try to make sure that better practices are going in the ground. So that work has been done for a little while, just waiting on final approval for that. So hopefully that'll be on the street soon. All right, a little bit of a lag. There we go. All right, so for upcoming webcasts, unfortunately, I don't have any that are up on the website now. We're just trying to sort out some dates for these webcasts. We have them all arranged. It's just a matter of finding the time that'll work for our different speakers. So there are 3 that are coming soon, one of which will be our Stormwater Roots Part 4 webcast on forest conservation. A relatively new one that we're just getting ready to have some discussions about on bacteria source tracking investigations. And then, as I have sort of alluded to in the past, the first part of our MS4 Training Academy series, kind of all about the ins and outs of runoff reduction. So keep an eye out on our website as well as our newsletters to register for those when they open up. All right, and so that brings me to our polls for today. I'm going to launch both of our polls at once here on your screen. The first one is to just tell us who you're representing today, whether you're with a local government, regulatory agency, either state or federal, private sector, NGO, academia, someone else, let us know in the chat box. And then our second question is just to let us know how many people are watching you today. A lot of you I know are watching at your desks, but sometimes we have some small groups get together in a conference room or whatnot. So this gives us a sense of how big our audience is. All right, we've got one group, welcome. A lot of other folks joining by themselves during lunchtime. A lot of local governments today, great to see. All right, thank you everybody for filling that out for us. I'm gonna go ahead and close that. All right, and so that brings me to introducing today's speaker. I'm really excited to have Julie with us. Julie Lawson is the director of Mayor Muriel Bowser's Office of the Clean City. She is a skilled team builder and communicator with more than 15 years of experience as an entrepreneurial advocate, marketing professional, and project manager. An international expert on plastic pollution policy and behavior change, she is a respected leader in engaging diverse communities on the restoration of the Chesapeake Bay. As founding executive director of Trash Free Maryland, she developed local, state, and national coalitions to pass cutting-edge legislation to protect neighborhoods and waterways from the Anacostia River to the oceans. Julie is passionate about restoring the Anacostia River so that it can be a full recreational, economic, and natural resource for all Washingtonians to enjoy. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in Linguistics from Haverford College. So welcome, Julie. Thank you so much for joining us. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. So go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, David. Hi, everybody. Glad you all could join us today. So this is kind of a presentation in 2 chapters. So just to get things kicked off, David gave a bit of my background, but I wanted to go a little bit further back in my past. About 15 years ago, I got involved with the Surfrider Foundation, which is an international organization founded by surfers to keep the beaches open and the water clean so that people can surf. And the DC chapter really led the grassroots movement to pass DC's disposable bag law in 2009, the first law of its kind in the country. Chair at the time. And then I took that work and started Trash Free Maryland in 2010, which really works on the policy side, builds the coalitions around Maryland to look at policies for source reduction, litter engagement and enforcement, and then also behavior change, social marketing campaigns, and how do we create the systems that help people do the right thing. I'm pleased to know that even since I've left, Trash Free Maryland continues to have great achievements. Last year passed the statewide polystyrene foodware ban in Maryland, and I know they're going gung-ho right now on a plastic bag ban for the state. So really pleased to see that work continue. 2.5 years ago, I joined the Mayor Bowser's administration here in DC to run the Office of the Clean City, which is a 20-year-old agency designed to coordinate across the work of about 3 dozen government agencies working on trash and litter issues, and elevates the perspective of the topic within the executive office of the mayor. So a lot of what you're going to see in the second half of this presentation, and I want you to think about ways that, while you may be looking at trash as a water pollution concern, how does it affect other community concerns and that may have greater political acceptance, public buy-in, or funding availability as ways to achieve your water quality goals through other avenues within local government. So the first thing that we're going to start with, this photo of me I love, is me holding my first microplastic sample, which was a gift from the North Atlantic from 2012, a survey collected by the Five Gyres Institute, and really captivated the imaginations of people who didn't really understand what microplastics meant in an ecological context. It spurred Trash Free Maryland in 2014 to begin its own citizen science project, the Trash Trawl in the Chesapeake Bay, which in 2015 led to a 3-week project collecting 60 samples from the Back River in Baltimore County down to the mouth of the Potomac between Maryland and Virginia to really try to get a sense of the level of plastic pollution in the bay. I am pleased to say that we finally have results that I'm happy to share with folks today. These data is pending publication in the Marine Pollution Bulletin, but we're happy to share some of the initial findings with you. I know that people have been waiting for this for a while. It's about 5 years old at this point. So to review these points, I'll show where the samples were collected. 30 of the samples were collected for analysis in Dr. Chelsea Rockman's lab at University of Toronto. The other 30 were collected for educational purposes so that we had sample jars to show around to advocates, legislators, anyone who we needed to teach about the issue. I mentioned that we started this project in 2014 as a pilot. This photo on the left is our very first sample collected, and I demonstrated that we needed to do more work. So the photo shows those little brown pieces or tulip poplar seeds that are about 1 inch long, and all of the other flecks there are microplastics. For those who aren't familiar with the term, although at this point I think most of us are, a microplastic by definition is any piece of plastic less than 5 millimeters. They can be either primary microplastics, where they were pre-production pellets, plastic pieces used to make things, generally called turtles, or they can be secondary, where they've broken down from other material. So, as I mentioned, we have 30 samples sent for laboratory analysis. Those locations are pointed on this map. Notice that 29 and 30 are at the Potomac. 28 up at the top is within Baltimore Harbor. 27 is the Back River, and then the rest are scattered between the main stem and the mouth of the smaller tributaries. We did do a lot of sailing out of Solomon's Island, so we have a number of samples at the beginning of the project from the mouth of the Patuxent as well. So these are the findings. All 30 samples had particles in them. We saw that the largest proportion of them were from fragments, along with fiber and foam. 27 and 28 are up near Baltimore. We can point to that being pretty clearly derived from urban stormwater in Baltimore City. We can go back to the map for a minute. 4, 19 and 20. We have 4 out in the middle near the Patuxent, and 19 and 20, again, downstream of Baltimore City, more in the main stem. And then 13, our other spike, is in the main stem off of Annapolis. So it wouldn't have any direct urban input there. That would be more the result, be subject to more of the mixing that would be occurring in the bay. So this is one of those samples from the Back River. The analysis that Dr. Rockman's lab conducted came out to showing that we estimated approximately 32,000 particles per square kilometer across the bay on average. This is less than was found in 2 other studies. The Bay of Marseille in France had 96,000 particles per square kilometer, and San Francisco Bay survey showed 700,000 particles per square kilometer. The paper currently does not list what size particles these are. Our screen went down to 330 microns. Other surveys, like the one I'm about to cover that Dr. Rockman herself did, go down to 10 microns, which is considerably smaller. And then our study does use the same equipment that was used in the Great Lakes a couple years prior. And that survey showed particles per square kilometer at 43,000. So we're pretty much on par with the Great Lakes when it comes to our plastic pollution survey. So we had Dr. Rockman on board with us for much of that project in 2015 as she was doing her own surveys, as I said, down to 10 microns. She was comparing 4 different urban watersheds, the Sacramento River, the Chesapeake Bay, the Mississippi River, and Lake Ontario. She wanted to look much more deeply, not just at what surface water samples had, but also what was contained in stormwater runoff, wastewater treatment plant effluent, and agricultural runoff. Her water samples from the bays themselves were conducted using bulk water samples as opposed to a trawling methodology that we use. So she's dumping a bucket in the water, pouring it into a vessel and taking it back for filtration, whereas we were dragging a trawl for 15 minutes to capture everything floating on the surface within that span. So it's interesting to compare what we found with what her findings were. Her locations, again, she was doing agricultural runoff on the eastern shore of Maryland, her urban runoff in Baltimore City, and then the 3 wastewater treatment plants in Washington, D.C., and Baltimore. So she was finding her particles per liter. You can read these bands. I will caveat that she gave me these slides to share with you all. I anticipate you'll all have questions, and I'm happy to circle back with her to get those answers for anything I can't answer for you on her data. I find the scans of what the materials were to be very telling. Wastewater treatment plant, clearly by far the most particles they're finding are fibers. Wastewater treatment facilities are not equipped to screen out fibers yet, and going to make it through beyond all of the other streams that they can do during that process. Stormwater, we see fragments. Again, these are going to be the secondary microplastics that are broken down from larger items, probably litter and other materials that are worn out and used by the general public. And then agriculture is going to be a mix of a variety of sources, because many of the biosolids from wastewater treatment are applied to agricultural land for fertilizer. And so whatever plastics were captured in the biosolid separation are then going to be transferred onto that land. So it's not surprising to find similar material that ended up in sewage, and like fibers that are going out with our washing machine drainage, ending up on agricultural land. We're also going to have material that is used in the practice of farming, whether that's plastic sheeting to use over winter to get earlier start on spring crops, or other activities that are happening on the land. She broke it down even further using the Raman scan to understand the specific materials that we have. Again, we have the anthropogenic dye-based, which is going to be the microfibers, primarily from clothing. We have a lot of PET and polyethylene, which are going to be our consumer plastics, our plastic bags, our water bottles, those types of materials. We do see some polystyrene and polypropylene, the PS and PP in here, and all forming a larger band within the contributors to this. So we see that we have a lot of the plastics that are contributing to our microplastic pollution in the bay are coming from potentially consumer sources, commonly used plastics within our daily lives. So a lot of our work has been focused on neighborhoods and the people using this material, and how can we intervene and make sure that we're not allowing the plastic to get down the stormwater system and conveyed into the water environment. We can do structural interventions like trash traps. In DC, we have trash traps on all of our tributaries to the Anacostia River, and they collect more than 7,000 pounds of trash each year that are cleaned out at least monthly and sorted. We have clean teams where we pay people to go clean up in commercial corridors. In DC, that generates about 115,000 pounds of trash a year cleaned up out of our neighborhoods. DC Water, our water utility, operates skimmer boats on the Anacostia River that collect over 1 million pounds a year. Community cleanup events get almost 45,000 pounds per year, and then hotspot cleanup, either from commonly littered areas or illegal dumping, those cleanups have generated 9,000 pounds of trash a year. But that's all what we can clean up. What can we do about prevention? As you know, DC has pretty robust laws related to source reduction. It's a 10-year-old bag law. Currently has a 77% compliance rate based on more than 500 inspections last year of food businesses that use plastic or paper bags. The foam ban, which took effect in 2015, has a 97% compliance rate based on 300 inspections over the last year. And that has removed foam takeout packaging, cups, plates, clamshells, and other similar materials from our restaurants and other food businesses. And part of that foam ban includes a requirement that all products used for food service in DC be recyclable or compostable if they're not reusable, which led to enforcement of our plastic straw ban starting in late 2018. When fines took effect starting last summer, we saw compliance on that requirement jump, and we are now at about a 63% compliance rate. So we really have tackled the majority of our large consumer food packaging in DC through these laws. We do know that we still have beverage containers to go, as well as snack wrappers and other food throwaway packaging that we need to tackle. So we are taking a look at solutions for that as well. Trying to change the slide. There we go. One thing that I think is undervalued as a way to prevent plastics from getting into our water bodies is the use of green infrastructure for the purpose of filtering these out. If we're looking at fragments and other secondary microplastics as being a primary contaminant in our destination water bodies, they're not going to be captured in trash traps. They're too small. Then they need to be treated more like toxins and other chemicals that we would see rain gardens, bioretention, and other permeable devices as helping to remove from the stormwater before it reaches the water bodies. Using bioretention as a filtration for plastics and trash has been controversial for many because it is more visibly dirty and it needs maintenance in order to not look like it's full of trash. That said, it's much easier to pick it up if it's on the street level than if it's in the river, and it's going to be a lot cheaper. You can use your clean teams that you're already paying to maintain those. These devices are going to need maintenance on an ongoing basis anyway as they load up with sediment and other toxic chemicals. So it's an opportunity, not a challenge, in my opinion. And it's really the only way that you're going to get these worn down fragments from things that are deteriorating. Once they're in the water, they're not going to be able to be screened out effectively. So we also, in our office, been looking at ways where we have these bioretention devices in residential areas on how we use resident education to maintain both tree boxes and bioretention, to enlist the residents in cleaning them up as well. They have a vested interest, obviously, in making sure that these devices are attractive if they're in front of their home. And this is a fairly easy way for them to help maintain our green infrastructure. So we spend a lot of our time, energy, and money on trash prevention by going after people who litter. It's, generations of public education campaigns trying to remind people that littering is bad. The survey results show, using both the stewardship indicator from the Chesapeake Bay program as well as public opinion and public behavior studies done in the DC area going back about 15 years, that it's really as low as about 5% of people who actually litter. And many of those people are already resistant to these types of public education messages. They're doing it out of a sense of rebellion or a sense of laziness. And they're going to be very hard to convince that they should be more socially engaged and socially thoughtful. I worked on this ad campaign, feel very proud of it. It is based on that research that showed that people who litter feel disconnected from their community, that they feel that a lot of stress and chaos in their lives, and that littering is one way for them to show a little bit of control against this community that has not treated them well. But we're putting up these ads asking for good behavior out of people who are not inclined to behave, while ignoring 95% of the population that is trying to do the right thing, and we could ask them to do more. They are going to be more receptive to these messages. So in our office, and we've been really focused on the idea of picking up trash and identifying ways that we can make sure that people are given every opportunity to do the right thing. We're also looking at all of the ways that trash is getting into our waterways that is not at the hand of someone who dropped it, whether they dropped it while walking down the street, threw it out of their car, or illegally dumped it. We do encourage these sorts of resident guerrilla activities to remind their neighbors. This was in my neighborhood. The person often would circle the piece of trash on the sidewalk with chalk and point it out, and then the next day come back and pick it up. So as I said, we've been trying to focus on the idea of picking up. We are going to be announcing this week the 3rd annual Mayor Spring Cleanup, which will be on April 4th. This is a different approach to cleanup where we don't just put on one event and ask people to come to it regardless of where they live. We ask people to go out wherever they want to go, even if it's by themselves for 5 minutes and just pick up a few pieces of trash. We do find a lot of people want to convene and gather with their friends or make it an activity with their family. So we encourage community members to put on events. We saw more than 24 events last year across all 8 wards that neighbors put on, and their neighbor showed up and they got to meet each other and work together. Each event was very different. They were very tailored to the culture and the interests of the community, and all we do from our side is to support any that need supplies and pick up of the trash. It's been a much easier way of running a very large-scale cleanup where we're not burdening our staff to try to put these events on, and the community really knows that they're taking the lead on protecting the places that they care about. Our office runs the Adopt a Block program, and in partnership with the District Department of Energy and Environment, we have Adopt Your District, which includes Adopt a Park and Adopt a Stream programs, so that depending on the area in the city that people really care about, whether it's their residential neighborhood, all the way down to a stream in Rock Creek Park, and how much work they want to put into it, picking up trash on a periodic basis, or doing more rigorous water quality monitoring. We just try to get them in the door and then send them to the agency that can assist them with that passion. We'll talk a little bit more about Adopt a Block at the end. We also partner with, as I mentioned, we have about 36 agencies we partner with, including the interagency activities of our Zero Waste DC initiative and the Sustainable DC plan, to not only increase our diversion and get the trash, reduce the amount of trash we produce overall, but also think about what that impact looks like on our communities. So I mentioned illegal dumping. We have a robust program called Dump Busters that is a partnership between the Department of Energy and Environment, Department of Public Works, and the Metropolitan Police Department that uses mobile cameras to capture individuals dumping material in a couple parts of the city. That work has resulted in 86 arrests in 2018 and 2019, and significantly reduced the amount of illegal dumping that we see, especially in Northeast DC. Through those arrests, the officers are doing interviews with the folks responsible for it, and we're finding out reasons that they are participating in this. Some, they don't want to make the trip all the way to the transfer station to properly dispose of it. It's just a sheer laziness piece. Others are, or they're just not aware of it. Others have more complicated concerns. We had a gentleman who was undocumented and knew that they might check his identification at Fort Cotton at the transfer station and didn't want to be caught with his immigration status. So he dumped. Unfortunately, he then got arrested, which complicated his situation even further. So in order to remove some of these barriers, we developed an event called Roll-Off Day. We started in neighborhoods that were seeing high levels of illegal dumping, especially where there might be unpermitted house renovations, and so the construction debris was being dumped in alleys. We wanted people to give people a no questions asked opportunity to unload their stuff. In other neighborhoods where people have just they're affluent, they have a lot of resources, they have a lot of stuff in their homes, it's easy for them to come to the event and unload all the things that they need to get rid of at once. So we bring out a dumpster. We partner with Department of Energy and Environment and the e-cycle program to do electronics recycling. And we often have a local charity participate where people can donate household items to pass on to folks in need. We do these events monthly and they rotate around the district. And we almost always fill the dumpster completely, giving us about 6 tons of trash collection per month through these events. And we invite other community partners to attend, whether it's violence prevention agencies, our 311 call center comes out so that you can meet the people who put in your service requests. We often have folks from our transportation agency there to talk about projects in the area, and other representatives from the mayor's office who can help with constituent concerns. So these have been really successful events that we expect to continue, and we get asked all the time if we can expand it, so we are taking a look at what our opportunities might be for that. We also know that a lot of trash is coming from overflowing trash cans. These are people who thought that they were doing the right thing, but that can might sit uncollected for a couple of days because it's not on the daily route, and all of that trash spills out and runs down the street in the gutter and down into the storm drain and into the receiving water bodies. We can increase our collections, and in some neighborhoods we have them even multiple times a day. But again, this is someone who thought that they were doing the right thing, and yet they're contributing to our trash pollution concern. We can put tops on the cans, which will reduce the amount of use of the can for household trash, which will fill it up very quickly if people are putting their bag of trash from their kitchen in it. Or we can use compacting cans, which keep everything inside. We did have an issue a couple of years ago with a local fast casual pizza chain that the boxes that they use don't fit in the cans with these tops. And so people would just kind of stack them up around the edge of the can. The can looks like it's overflowing and then it spills out all over. We've been working with that pizza company to make sure that they're keeping an eye on the litter around their establishments, but then also rethinking their boxes to see if they can fold down to a smaller size and fit into the cans better. But even tops don't always help. This is in Rock Creek Park after an event, picnic. That trash is not getting picked up every day. That trash is all full of food because it's a picnic. So leaving it there next to that trash can, again, they thought they were doing the right thing because it's a trash can. The material will get picked up, but animals are going to get into that, and it's going to drag all that plastic right down into the stream. And then when we move on to private property, we need to ensure that our residents understand that their trash cans need to be closed so stuff doesn't blow out. They can't just pile their trash up next to a barrel outside a restaurant and hope that it will be picked up before the bags get torn open. These situations like this can exacerbate rodent infestations, which then spread the trash even further as animals get into the bags and carry it with them. I've witnessed raccoons taking trash out of a can a couple of years ago and dragging it up into some bushes. So we want to make sure that our trash is not just in the can, but secure. And I'm just throwing out all of these different ways that people are trying to do the right thing, but it's still leading to litter and pollution. We don't have answers yet, but these are things that we are working on, trying to resolve and educating our residents. Finally, we talk about our private property. Our public works department only collects trash from 100,000 properties in the district. It's about 30% of the total trash that we produce. The other 70% of the trash is handled by commercial haulers, of which we have approximately 60 registered to operate. So any given alley could have a dozen different haulers operating, which all will have different containers, different levels of education for their properties that they service. And the containers may be in different levels of repair. These ones on the right are missing lids, which exacerbates illegal dumping and allows animals to get in easily. The one on the left, all of these different properties have ended up putting all their dumpsters in one place, which is unsightly. And when things are unsightly, people tend to treat it badly until we see illegal dumping, like that couch that has been dropped off there. And then it becomes harder to enforce and get the proper hauler to come pick that up. With the mayor, we also know that people will put up signs to explain, but often that doesn't actually lead to any better behavior. People aren't thinking about how they're disposing of their trash. Even if they're putting it in the dumpster, they may not be reading it at the time, or they may not understand. So given all of that, along with increased reports of rodents over the last 2 years, last summer our office conducted a series of rat blitzes and alley inventory and observation work to really understand the scope of what we're dealing with, especially in our mixed-use neighborhoods. We treated rat burrows and looked for systemic issues like the preponderance of mismatched cans that don't fit in private space and stick out into public space. And we reported illegal dumping issues so that we could get those cleaned up. We did a lot of work talking to and also enforcing against businesses and residents that were not practicing proper disposal practices, and set up a series of recommendations for the city administrator to pursue across a number of agencies, including expanding our trash compactor grant program for businesses that replaces their dumpsters with a large compactor to seal the trash in, and looking at better ways of educating our residents. We'll be working with the Department of Public Works on education for both property managers and residents of apartment buildings. These buildings, any building of 4 units or larger is serviced by these commercial haulers. So they're not receiving the regular education that our single-family home residents receive from the district government. And they may not be getting any education at all from their hauler, even though it is required. So we're going to do a push to remind them about what they can and shouldn't recycle, the importance of recycling, and then also to make sure that they're putting their trash out at the right time in order to reduce the amount of animal access and reduce the amount that gets carried off. So I've given you kind of where we are with understanding the problems and starting to think about solutions. Going back to the alley piece, one quick item. Another strategy that we are exploring is already in place in a number of cities around the country. I mentioned that we have 60 haulers servicing 70% of our trash. That means that they could be servicing 1 or 2 properties per block and sending these trucks on long, circuitous routes across the city. And the trash collection is not all going to be consistent to the same day. So there's going to be overloaded dumpsters on any given day of the week in any given alley. We are looking at ways to either franchise the system, or in other words, limit the amount of haulers who can work in any given neighborhood. This program is already being implemented in New York City right now, and we are following a lot of their lessons learned in developing the concept and implementation to see how we might be able to make that work here in the district in order to make the trash disposal experience better for our residents, reduce traffic and air quality concerns, pollution concerns, as well as labor conditions for the haulers and the trash collectors themselves. So to give you a little bit of a end on a high note here, wanted to share some of our successes around Adopt a Block. These are some young neighbors who attend the Stoke School in Northeast DC, and they have been enthusiastic participants in the program. Adopt a Block requires that participants commit to cleaning up at least 2 blocks, at least 4 times a year for 2 years. They get a sign hung up with their name, and we've done a few different strategies to both establish some accountability and also some recognition for our participants, which has tremendously grown how many groups and how many blocks we have involved in the program. When we took over the program in 2018, we had 341 blocks adopted by 87 groups. And as of last week, we now have more than doubled both of those to 786 blocks by 208 groups across all 8 wards. We set up a reporting structure where they complete a form to tell us how much they picked up and how many people participated and things that they found. That way we can report back to, for our MS4, our stormwater permit, how much trash was collected. Those numbers hadn't been collected prior to this reporting, and people can see the results of their work on a map. When they submit the form, it all goes right up onto a map, and you can look at everybody else's results. So it's really gratifying for our participants. We sent out certificates to them signed by the mayor, congratulating them for their service to the community, which was an extremely popular recognition tool and very low effort for us to make them feel good. We acknowledge them, we invite them to events with the mayor and acknowledge their work with her at press conferences. We've also really used this program from a public safety perspective, especially neighborhoods where we know that we have increased violence or blight or other community concerns. We're encouraging our participants to use 311 to report maintenance concerns that we need an agency to go out and fix. We are partnering with our violence prevention programs to do events so that people can meet their neighbors and get involved together and feel a stronger sense of community and bring a more positive feeling to a community in a time where there may be additional violence or tension in the neighborhood. And allowing, because we published the map of where all the blocks are adopted, it helps young folks who might need community service or might need a role model or other community engagement, that they can find something that's in their neighborhood or even down their street and find potentially a new mentor who can help them out. So we're really not looking at this just from a water pollution perspective, but tying it to lots of different other community concerns that are priorities of the mayor's administration and of the community itself, in a way to tackle the trash pollution side in a way that doesn't seem quite so scientific and distancing as sometimes environmental activities can. So I think I'm going to stop there and see if anybody has any questions.
Great, thanks so much, Julie. We'll give folks a minute to put their questions in the chat box. Just a reminder, you can use that chat feature to put your questions in, and we'll get to, we have quite a few minutes here left over, so we can get to as many as folks have. While we give folks a second, Julie, I had a question or two for you. One of which was kind of going back to your point about using stormwater BMPs as an option for treating microplastics and fragments in particular. With our stormwater audience, and we talk a lot about BMPs for nutrient and sediment reductions, I think that's an area of interest for folks. But you mentioned using them kind of for the purpose of plastics, and I just wondered if you saw any differences in how or where you might look to implement those types of practices if you're looking specifically at plastics removal as your end goal.
Yeah. So here in the district, we have, we've been installing them in certain downtown areas, partly as a beautification measure, in putting garden space on public sidewalks, but we're also really deliberately using them as ways to reduce the flow into our combined sewer. So there are dedicated projects around certain neighborhoods, and we find them at the bottoms of hills, obviously, and in triangle parks and other pocket parks where we've got some open green space in an otherwise pretty built up area. We do know that the bags, chip bags and other bottles and things that might be in the gutter, they make their way in there through the curb cut. And we do have guidance for people who are doing cleanups about how they can safely get in there and remove that. I don't know that we've really studied the opportunities for the fragments and the smaller pieces, larger than litter, but I think that it would be treated much in the same way as any other chemicals that are conveyed through stormwater in terms of needing to be removed on a regular basis.
Great, thanks. Couple of questions are starting to come in from folks. One of them was on the slide, and this goes back to Dr. Rockman's research, I believe, so just let me know if we would need to defer to her. But there was a slide showing the breakdown of the different types of plastics, and there was a category in there that was referred to as natural. Do you know what that refers to? What type of plastic would be categorized as natural?
Yeah, so I think that that's actually, it's going to be more of an organic material, not plastic. The way that a lot of these surveys are done is the sample is dried and the researcher is picking them out by hand. And so sometimes they make mistakes. Sometimes they grab stuff that is not plastic. And so that's my guess on what that is that they found something that looked like a fiber and it turned out to be a shred of bark or something.
Great, okay. A question about plastic bottle deposits. Is that something that DC would consider promoting, or have you thought about in the past?
Yeah, so DC pursued a bottle deposit in 1987. That was along the same lines as the existing deposits in 10 states, where you purchase your drink and you pay an extra 5 or 10 cents, and then when you return the bottle, you get the 5 or 10 cents back. Those are very effective. They are very effective for encouraging pickup and keeping the materials separated at collection. You've got your glass is kept separate from your other material, and you've also got plastic and metal are going to be cleaner and easier to recycle. That being said, the last bottle deposit that passed in the continental U.S. was California in 1984. At this point, we now have curbside recycling and so much more ubiquitous use of these containers that the model seems like it needs some updating. The economics around how municipalities collect their recycling would be upended with a deposit system laid on top. All of these deposits were created before curbside recycling, and so you could put curbside recycling on top of the deposit, and now we would be trying to go the other direction, and it would be upending to the way that the economics work. We are looking at ways to hold the producers accountable and get them more involved and responsible for making sure that their materials are collected. You know, obviously, if they are producing all this material and then leaving the burden on the taxpayers to deal with disposal, that's not fair, and they should be paying their part. We've seen success with our electronics recycling. We also have a paint program where the producers manage all of the take back of it, and those have both been working really well. So we are exploring what that would look like, potentially with just bottles and potentially with broader packaging scope.
All right, we have a question about riparian buffers or riparian zones, and just whether you know if there's been any work or if there's anything known about how riparian buffers tend to act as a filtration or a filter for plastics or microplastics. The questioner, Grace, her assumption was that they act sort of similar to bioretention like you discussed earlier, but just wondered if there's been any work done on that area.
Yeah, that's been an interest of mine as well. I always know that, again, going back to that, a lot of the loose trash may not have been littered. There's a ramp off of South Dakota Avenue onto New York Avenue and 295 in DC, right next to the Anacostia River and the Costco, if you are familiar, where cars are picking up speed, and particularly trucks that are heading out to Prince George's County to dispose of trash. And stuff is blowing out of those trucks, and it all gets caught in the trees. So those trees look horrible, but the river is on the other side of them. So I would much rather the trees be full of trash where we can clean that out than for the trash to just blow right past them and into the water. If we took the trees out, it would go right into the river. So again, if we're interested in maintaining the aesthetics of the trees, it's going to inspire more people to pick it up. I did have some conversations also with a Chop Tank riverkeeper a couple of years ago. I mentioned the use of plastic sheeting on agricultural land, and they had found a farm in the critical area on the eastern shore. So it's subject to more stringent laws around nutrients and stormwater, but the plastic sheeting had worn out and was blowing into the chop tank, and the only way that they could pursue any enforcement was under the litter control laws, which was only going to be a $50 fine, even though they were directly putting plastic into threatened water bodies. So I think that there's opportunity there to think about the areas that we're trying hardest to protect, making sure that we're including plastic, particularly as a pollution issue in them.
Right. There was a question, it was phrased specifically to Baltimore, but I think that there's some application that can be generalized as well. And to that point, if anyone is familiar with how Baltimore is handling it, please feel free to either shoot me an email or put it in the chat box. But street sweeping is used pretty heavily in Baltimore, for instance, for sediment nutrient reduction purposes. And I assume that there would probably be some plastics being picked up in that study. So I'll frame the question this way. For the study that Dr. Rockman did, on sort of categorizing urban sources, do you know where in the watershed those samples were being collected? So, if there was some removal sort of at the street level, would that have been taken out of her samples? I guess, if she's sampling that at the stream level. And then the other piece of that is, do you know of any work that's been trying to characterize plastics sort of in actual like street sediments or things like that might get picked up by a street sweeping program?
I think I'd have to look more into that. I would caution that the Baltimore's work toward their trash reduction occurred around the same time as these studies, so it may not have been enough to show much of an impact. I can also say that the samples that we took from the surface water in the harbor, the size range of the particles, you can't see my air quotes, it went out as high as 88 millimeters, which is not a microplastic, it's a big chunk of stuff. And if you look at my education samples, I have cigarette lighters in them, I have an entire plastic bag. So I think a lot of that stuff's getting in despite the street sweeping, because street sweeping is not constant and it's not every day anywhere in the city. I don't know where Dr. Rotman's samples were specifically taken. I do believe Gwynn Falls was at the stormwater outfall pipe at Gwynn Falls. So that would be my guess, is that they weren't done in the gutter, but they were done at outfall pipe.
Right. Okay. Great.
Did I get all that?
Yes, I think so. And then I just had one more for you, and then I will let you go because we're just about at 1 o'clock. And I wanted to ask, you mentioned how in the district, the sort of residential trash pickup only accounted for, I think you said about 30% of the total trash being produced in the district. So, for a community that maybe is more limited in some of their resources, whether it's financial or they need to focus an education campaign, I was looking at those commercial operators and sort of those larger scale, dumpster efforts and things like that. Is that where you'd recommend they go, or do you have any suggestions for folks that might be looking to do a program sort of targeted that way?
Yeah, I think, I look at our district residents and the public and all of our stakeholders at different types of audiences. We have the ones that they just need to be told what to do and they'll do it. And then the ones, we've got the really excited ones who can take it to the next level, and we want to help them help others. And then we have the ones who just don't care or don't get it. And so we do need to have multiple strategies to reach all of them. I tend to think that most people at their homes, and this is not across the board for sure, but most people at many homes are doing a pretty good job of keeping their trash contained. They may not know, they may forget that they need to keep their lid closed, or they may not be aware of that part. But residential trash in general, I don't see as the big problem. My big area of concern is really what people are doing when they're on the go. We have so much food, and 80% of the trash that we're pulling out of the Anacostia River each year is related to food. So much food that we eat out and about, and we're putting in the public trash cans. And I know this doesn't apply in less dense, more rural, suburban areas, but we're putting so much into our public trash cans, so much burden, that we need to be thoughtful about how much our public services can actually keep up with all of that. That's where my focus really is going to be in terms of changing public behavior. Great.
Well, thank you again so much, Julie. I think we've covered all the questions, and I appreciate the extra discussion here at the end. I have put a link to the survey in the chat box. The one that was on the last slide, apologies, was obviously not the correct link. So you can link directly to the evaluation from that chat box. I appreciate it if you take a second to fill that out. So, I'll just say thank you again one more time, Julie. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for today's webcast. We will have a recording and the slides posted for you probably by the end of this week. So feel free to share those with your colleagues. And you can always reach out to me via email, wood.csn@outlook.com, if you have any questions, that pop into your head later, and then I can pass those along as the question dictates. So thank you, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of your week.
Thanks, David.